What's up, everybody? I'm Jesse. I'm Game Over Jesse, and my good friend Cessseeezy. My good friend Cessseeezy asked me to come and join on her episode 7 of the Hylian Inquiry. Episode 7, to answer your Pokemon questions. So let's get started. Question number 1 comes from Healy Santes, who says, "Do you think that we could get a Minish Cap 2? Maybe. Typically, the Zelda games are never titled 2 at like a direct sequel, even if it is a direct sequel. Like Spirit Tracks was the sequel to Wind Waker, or Phantom Hourglass. Spirit Tracks was the sequel to Phantom Hourglass. Phantom Hourglass was a direct sequel to Wind Waker, coming literally directly after it, just like Majora's Mask did for Ocarina of Time. But it wasn't Ocarina of Time 2 or Wind Waker 2. It was, yeah, you know. And the thing with Minish Cap is it's less likely to happen than actually happening, because Capcom was a big part in creating Minish Cap, just like they helped with Four Swords and Four Swords Adventures. It was under the guidance of Nintendo and Aonuma. Obviously they had to approve everything, but mostly the characters, like Vaddie and some of the others, were original concepts by Capcom. Specifically, the guy that's behind all of the Mega Man games, now Mighty Number 9, because he has his own studio, he was the person in charge of the Minish Cap. And he's not even at Capcom anymore. He has his own little indie company that he's making games on now. But it would be cool if Capcom would do something like that, but typically Nintendo doesn't like to use things that they didn't come up with, which is why you've never seen a game made by Nintendo using Vaddie. It's always using one of their own original characters, and even then they hardly ever use the same one, unless it's Ganon. And that's just because, like, if you make too many Zelda games without Ganon, is it really a Zelda game? It is. But, yeah.
This question is from Shipwreck Shark. How do you feel about Zelda's role in the storyline, even though you never actually play as her? Even though there's a Japanese version of A Link to the Past that does allow you to play as a female. So, since you mentioned A Link to the Past, I don't know if your question is in regards to Breath of the Wild specifically, or The Legend of Zelda and her story, her character in the storyline in general as a whole with the Zelda franchise. I can say in regards to Breath of the Wild, I really like her character. She shows more emotion than in other Zelda games, in my opinion. Relatable emotion. The sun is in my face! More relatable in the sense that you can understand where she's coming from when she feels like a failure, when she's at the goddess statue and praying, to whoever, the goddess Hylia, saying, what's wrong with me? Why can't I harness this power? And when Urbosa points out that Link is a living memory, or a living reminder of her own failures, because she looks at Link and feels like, he is accomplishing what he needs to accomplish. He has the Master Sword. He is the hero. He is doing his part where she can't harness the power of the Triforce, which is all she's been training to do her whole life. And the reason I say that's relatable is because there's absolutely no way that none of us have ever felt like that. I mean, we've all felt like that once, at least once or twice, or sometimes we're even feeling like that right now. Like, what am I doing wrong? Why can't I do this? Why can't I pass this class? Why is this person passing this class and not me? If I've been studying for this class so much and I can't, or Why, you know, is this person doing so much better at this job than me, even though I do whatever it is I need to do? Or, you know, we all have those insecurities. The sun is like really in my face. But we all have those insecurities. We all feel that once in a while. We all feel that here and there. So to see it on screen from a character that we love so much is super relatable. In regards to playing as a female and A Link to the Past, I didn't know there was a Japanese version where you could play as a female, so that's pretty cool. I was honestly really excited when Linkle was announced. The only thing I was actually really upset about that was her name. I don't like the name Linkle. I don't like it. But the idea of playing as a female was really exciting to me. But then to find out that it was just for Hyrule Warriors was kind of like, oh, okay. I mean, because in Hyrule Warriors you can play as Zelda, you can play as Midna and whatever that girl is with the blue hair. What's her name? Well, yeah, you can play. No, you can play as her, Sia's sister, or the one that looks like just an anime character. She didn't even look like a Zelda character to me. She's not even in any Zelda game, to be honest. What is her name? Anyways, I'm sure you guys know who I'm talking about. I'll put a picture of her right here. You'll know who I'm talking about. So, you know, to play as a female in Hyrule Warriors as Linkle was kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, we've been playing as females in that game already. But it was cool to be introduced to a new character who wanted to be the hero of Hyrule, like Link. But in an actual Zelda game, canon Zelda game would be cool. I know a lot of people would prefer not to play as a female because, you know, it's always been Link. It's always been the traditional Link saves Zelda. And to play as a female would be a huge change for the franchise. And I know they've broken so many conventions already. Something like this would really, really break conventions. And I'm not sure how the fan base would react to that. Because I know there are some people who think it would be cool, and some people who are like totally against that idea. But yeah, hope you liked that answer.
Question number fish comes from Skull Gamer, who asks, would you like to see a Zelda game where you can play as a different character? Not by controlling, not including Hyrules. Hyrules? Hyrule Warriors. That's a game. Hyrule Warriors. A Zelda game where you play as a different character. Well, we had Majora's Mask where you play as Cafe, or whatever you want to call him. It's completely optional, but you can play as him. Phantom Hourglass, you play as the little Goron, I think, in one of the dungeons. Whatever. Oh, not by controlling them. What? How do you play as them if you don't control them? I don't get what you mean. Like, do you mean the main game? Like, are we gonna play through the main Zelda story without Link or optional characters? Maybe. Nintendo has said a bunch of times. Honestly, it's Aonuma, not necessarily Nintendo. Aonuma said a bunch of times that he wants to make a Zelda game, or that he would like to make a Zelda game where you play as a female, or where you play as a Zelda, even someone other than Link. So it's completely possible. We've had 3-4 Zelda games where you play as Tingle, so not that those are canon, but technically they're still Zelda games. And the story in some of the games happened directly after some of the canon Zelda games, although the side story isn't necessarily canon. But yeah, I think it's totally possible, especially with Aonuma. He's been working on the Zelda series. He worked on like 1 game at Nintendo, maybe 2 before Zelda, and then he's been working on Zelda for like 20 years. 20 years ago, he was working on Ocarina of Time. They just finished Breath of the Wild. Like a lot of developers, I'm sure he wants to work on a game outside of the Zelda franchise, which seems like what they're doing now. Miyamoto used to be the director of the Zelda games, and then he moved on. Now he's like in charge of like just making things run at Nintendo. Aonuma went from being a producer to being the director to where now he's in charge of the Zelda series. And I think just like Miyamoto moving on to oversee a bunch of different Zelda games or Nintendo games, I think Aonuma will eventually move on to where he's overseeing not just Zelda games, but maybe Mario or Metroid and possibly even an original title, because they're coming up with like Splatoon, ARMS, and Splatoon. So, yeah, working on the same game for 20 years, you're more than likely wanting to move on, work on something else. Even if you do love it, you still want to experience something else. Because with Breath of the Wild, he wanted to kind of move outside of the traditional lore of the Zelda series, which is why it takes place so far in the future, because nothing that has happened in the past has a huge influence on what's going on inside Breath of the Wild, aside from just Ganon coming back like he always does. But there's no direct influences from another game. So even with Breath of the Wild, you can see that he doesn't want to be tied down to the lore of the Zelda series. So experimenting is a way of getting outside of what he's been doing. So I think it's really possible. Probably a longer answer than you expected, but you shouldn't expect much, I guess.
This question is from Maligan. Would you rather live in Zora's Domain or Korok Forest? Okay, so personally, I like the scenery of a forest. I like being around trees, taking pictures of trees, the whole smell of like nature. I love going hiking, all of that, but I wouldn't want to live in a foresty type of area. I prefer Zora's Domain because I am totally a water type of person. I used to be on swim team in high school. I love going to the beach. I love going swimming in the summer. I love being around water. That's just me. And I loved the architecture of Zora's Domain in Breath of the Wild. One of the questions I received in a previous episode was, what's your favorite architecture in the game? And I had said it was Zora's Domain. I think it's beautiful, beautifully done, especially when you defeat Varuta and the sun comes out and you can see the architecture a little more clearly in daylight. I love it. It's beautiful. And the Zoras are like walking mermaids, basically. They're like, they're like mermaids. If I were to explain to someone what a Zora is and I say like a fish person, what are you gonna think? A mermaid. But they walk. Walking mermaids. Yes.
And they can breathe underwater.
But anyways, the Korok Forest, when I think of that, what comes to my mind is the Lost Woods. And I wouldn't really want to live there. You get lost in the Lost Woods, But not the Lost Woods, the Korok Forest in Wind Waker, on the other hand, was actually pretty interesting to me. I liked the setup. I liked how it was an island, and the island itself looked like a giant tree trunk, the way it was circular-ish, and then and it's like hidden inside. You go through the waterfall to find it, and that's when we see the Koroks for the first time ever. And the Deku tree was in there. It was like a cute little safe haven, like a hidden area. I really liked that. I thought that was cute, cool. But again, when I think Korok Forest, the first thing that comes to my mind is the Lost Woods and Breath of the Wild. And I just no. I wasn't much of a fan of the Lost Woods in Ocarina of Time or Breath of the Wild, mostly because I kept getting lost. I remember the first time I played Ocarina of Time, I would get so frustrated because every time you go through one area and you come out from the very front, I was like, why? Just take me where I need to go. It was frustrating. But yeah, so that's basically why I prefer Zora's Domain over Korok Forest.
I would live in Korok Forest.
Abigail would live in Korok Forest.
Zora's Domain.
Angelo, Zora's Domain. Majority rules.
Yay!
Next question comes from RPG Tour Guide, who says, Great edition of the mailbag, smiley face. Just a secret. This mailbag questions inquiry. Cessseeezy asked me to do it for her channel, but her channel didn't have that many questions, so I had to use some from my Zelda Mailbag. But then all of the questions for the Zelda Mailbag were old, so they were all about Breath of the Wild, and I had to go back to a video that's a year old before I could get questions that weren't about Breath of the Wild, because everybody wanted to know about Breath of the Wild, but now we already know, so there's no point in answering those questions because they were stupid questions. Like, do you think Fi is gonna come back to Breath of the Wild? Or do you think in Breath of the Wild you'll be able to play as the past memories or one of the other characters? And the answer to all of them is no, so you can't. So I used this one. Here's a question, or maybe a concept of what I was thinking about recently. ... What if there were a Zelda game where Link became the hero of dimensions? The game would involve Link traveling between different timelines, exploring the familiar worlds, and battling against old foes like Skull Kid, Majora, Vaddie, and Ganon. Naturally, he put that in parentheses. Not parentheses, the comma, back comma. He could team up with Links of these three of these different dimensions as well. What are your thoughts on this idea? I think they kind of did this with Hyrule Warriors, and while it would be cool, a bit of fan service to pick all of the playable different Links, or at least go back in time and visit each one of them in a spot. Ocarina of Time, Ocarina of Time Link was into the Twilight Princess whenever you did the thing to learn the moves. Yeah. There was the Hylian Shard, Stalfos dude. Link from Ocarina of Time was the Stalfos dude, and he would teach you stuff. So then Link would learn it from his grandpa. Grandpa Stalfos was teaching Link, and they had a moment, but it was a skeleton, so it was probably kind of creepy, like the "I am your father" thing from Star Wars, but it's Link, I am your grandfather, but I'm also a skeleton, and this isn't Halloween, but you're a wolf, so don't make fun of me, don't stop judging. And then Wind Waker Link obviously sees the statue of Ocarina of Time Link, but I don't necessarily think there's a version of Link that could go back and see their own. Lately, Nintendo wants to stay away from the timeline, as I talked about earlier. I don't know what order Cessseeezy's putting these questions in, but there was a question earlier about something similar. But yeah, I don't see that happening ever. Hyrule Warriors is probably the closest we're gonna get because it mends together all of the timelines. Breath of the Wild, of course, you can change all of the different Links, clothes and tunics and stuff, but as actually seeing another Link, even in Triforce Heroes, Nintendo said the Link that you play as is the only canon Link. The other people are just friends or whatever, like they're not canon Links, they're just other heroes of that town, or however they worded it. I don't know, it was weird. Does it make more sense than Four Swords though? Like where you split into four, where you're just hanging out with two of your buddies, but they're not your buddies because they're not real. I don't know, it's weird. Triforce Heroes, play it, it's good. It's weird though.
This question is from RPG. Would you like Zelda to be more story driven, or be like Breath of the Wild and have the story being somewhat minimal and optional? I liked the fact that the story was kind of optional in Breath of the Wild because it kind of reached out to other gamers who, I mean, as much as I love the stories and theories and everything of Zelda, there are so many gamers that miss out on Zelda because they don't care much for story. They just want to enjoy certain gameplay, the whole idea of puzzle solving, things like that, and Zelda offers that. And with Breath of the Wild, they didn't have to worry about the story, and it was, as you said, optional. You could or you couldn't go looking for the memories. I mean, some people just don't have an interest in it. I personally have already found all the memories, whereas my stepdad, on the other hand, has been playing Zelda since the very first Zelda that ever came out, and with this one, he finished the game and he found a few memories, but it wasn't like a big drive for him. That's just who he is. I mean, so, like I said, some people prefer story, some people don't, and this game gave that option to both sides. And I feel like another home console Zelda game, I want it to be more like Breath of the Wild, and a more traditional Zelda game like Ocarina of Time, or something where one dungeon leads to the other, could be for something handheld like the 3DS. Because I personally love exploring in video games. I love being able to explore, and as much as I love like something like Kingdom Hearts, for example, there's only so much that you can explore. There's so many areas that are like limited, areas that are closed off, areas you can't go to, and I mean, that's one thing I personally wish I could do in Kingdom Hearts, was explore a little more, as in like a Zelda game. But for Zelda, I forgot what my point was, but for Zelda, I liked being able to go wherever I wanted in Breath of the Wild. I like that I could go to whatever shrine or divine beast whenever I wanted, whereas in other Zelda games, like, you can't go there unless you have an item from a previous dungeon. This dungeon will give you an item that lets you go to this dungeon, and that dungeon will give you an item that lets you go there. And I know I was speaking to one other person before in a stream, Jack Durston, Gate of Time. He mentioned that being able to go from one dungeon to the other helped him feel more accomplished in the Zelda game, because it's like, yes, you can finally reach this dungeon because you accomplished this dungeon. And for me personally, I just don't get that sense of accomplishment. I just want to go where I want to go. I mean, I still feel a sense of accomplishment when I finish a dungeon regardless, whether it leads me to another one or not. And just having that freedom to go to whichever one I want from the get-go was really like something I enjoyed in Breath of the Wild. And I know I'm probably not wording this the best I could, but that's a huge thing in Breath of the Wild that I've really enjoyed. So, you know, as I said, future Zelda games, home consoles, I want it to be open world, optional. I still want a story. I like that Zelda still had a story. I don't want a story completely gone. Like, I hope you guys aren't I hope you guys aren't taking that from this response, because I do, excuse me, as I said, love the story, love theories, love all of that, but I like that it was implemented optionally. I like that, what's it called? That it's still there. Even though for some people they didn't have to go find it, the story was still there. It was just up to you as the player to find it or not. So I don't want you guys to think that the next Zelda game, I don't want a storyline at all, because I need a storyline. I like a storyline in any game. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
I would like it story driven, but optional at the same time.
But yeah, alright. Thanks for watching, guys.
Our next question comes from the One, who is actually a friend of mine. He says, hold on. The One says, which link would you like to see returned? Which link would you like to see returned in a future Zelda game? I would like to see, if I screw this question up, I can't redo it. So there's that. I would like to see, the questions aren't even on the paper. That's the thing. This is just, there's nothing on this side. And then the purple paper has stuff on it, but shh. Which would you like to see returned in a future Zelda game? Which link? I would love to see third Hero of Time game. You can call me stupid now, obviously, but nobody would have guessed Breath of the Wild took place 10,000 years, 10,100 years after any of the other games. Could be happening at the same time as like Zelda 1 and 2, just like in a different timeline, because after Twilight Princess. Or at least that's my thoughts, I don't know. Anyways, I was predicting, because the Hero of Time dies, and then the split occurs, and Ganon, all that stuff, takes over the Downfall timeline. Well, I thought before Link dies, or Ganon does the final blow, and then the sages seal Ganon or whatever in the place, instead of sealing Ganon when you do the final blow on him, before he's able to do the final blow on you, the sages, and Zelda, of course, because she's still alive during this, would seal Link. And then in the future, after wishing on the Triforce, whatever mumbo jumbo they do, because there's magic, that's what you call magic, mumbo jumbo. Not jumbo, mumbo jumbo. I think, wasn't that Banjo-Kazooie? Little skull kid from Banjo-Kazooie. Anyways, Mumba Jumba? I don't even know. Anyways, I thought whenever he comes out of that thing, that would be the hero of Link from the Downfall timeline being revived, because it's, spoilers, it's called the Chamber of Resurrection. That's it. It's and then it would kind of make sense because Ganon's took over everything. So in Ocarina of Time, if Link dies and he's resurrected, that ties straight into the story, and then Ganon takes over for who knows how long, and that ties in with Breath of the Wild. So kind of makes sense because the battle happens in Hyrule Castle. So you'd think they would seal Link in the resurrection place or in like wherever, and then they would use their power to seal Ganon inside the castle, and then that's just the castle's there, but I guess it's not destroyed. So yeah, I thought Breath of the Wild was going to be that. I always said that I would love to see Link from, okay, so like for a long time, Link from Twilight Princess was one of my favorite Links, probably my second favorite. I liked, he was real cool. He was a cool dude, that Link of Twilight Princess. In the same way that, because Twilight Princess had so many similarities to Ocarina of Time, it basically did everything Ocarina of Time did, but like a few 100 years, 100 years, whatever. I can't count that high. Yeah, so it was supposed to be like, you did the first 3 dungeons, the forest dungeon, fire dungeon, water dungeon. Ocarina of Time, you did that. Twilight Princess, you did that. Then the twist, or whatever it is, happens, where you, Ocarina of Time, you turn into an adult, Ganondorf takes over Twilight Princess, I think like something with the stuff, something happens, and then more bad stuff happens. And they both kind of followed the same path. So, and that was kind of what Aonuma even said, that he was just trying to make it to where it was the same thing, but just what they wanted to do with Ocarina of Time, like the sword horse combat. And then there was what was it? Oh yeah, so like all the similarities. I was thinking like, well, at the end of Ocarina of Time, Navi, whatever, flies off, and you gotta go after her. Link winds up in the Lost Woods, and then Termina, which there's a lot of debate on Termina. The people that made the Zelda games, Aonuma, who was in charge of Majora's Mask, at different times, one time he's quoted as saying that Termina is a physical, real location located beside Hyrule, and then another time he said that it was like a fictional dream or whatever, kind of like Koholint Island and Link's Awakening, which I would love to see, like a 3D version of Link's Awakening. There's a guy making it with the Zelda 64 engine, but anyways, that's for another time. So yeah, like Navi flies off, Link goes to find her, wind up in Lost Woods. Twilight Princess Link loses his companion for the game. Oh, that's something I didn't think about. So like Link is frozen in time or whatever when he pulls out the Master Sword, and then 7 years becomes an adult. But Navi, what's Navi doing? Is she just chilling with Rauru? Like I seen a cartoon once where it was like what happened during the time, and it was Link just frozen, Disney, frozen. Let it go. Link was pulling the sword out of the thing, the pedestal or whatever, but he was just frozen, like slowly aging. And it was like Rauru sitting on a couch. Rauru's Gaebora, just so you guys know. Rauru sitting on a couch or a chair watching TV while like time goes by, and then you can see Link like growing up in it. And the side is pretty funny. But anyways, like what does Navi do? Navy? What does she do during that time, 7 years? Does she just chill with Rauru, or like do they get in arguments and stuff? Anyways, Link goes after her, try to find Navi because she flies off without saying anything for whatever reason. Link and Twilight Princess does the same thing for Midna. Like I thought it would be cool, like because Midna leaves, she breaks the Twilight Mirror, or whatever. But like if you created the Twilight Mirror to get to the Twilight Realm, like you could just make another Twilight Mirror. You could wish on the Triforce for like another portal there, because Link, like he saved Hyrule. They should give him at least one wish. Like, does he do all that for nothing? One wish, one world. Yeah, so it's like, well, what if Link from Twilight Princess is like, hey, my grandfather went to Termina once. I read that in a photo album. Let's go there. And then he goes there. Obviously that wouldn't really be what happened. I don't think they had cameras in Twilight Princess. I think they only had those in Termina. And then Hyrule and Wind Waker, but I don't think Twilight Princess had any. Anyways, so Twilight Princess Link, he sets off to find a way to find Midna. And then he gets lost in the Lost Woods, because that's why they're called the Lost Woods. And then he finds his way into Termina. Now it's like Ocarina of Time Link, but like he went to Termina, and now it's his great grandson. He goes to Termina, and then everybody's there is like, oh, we heard legends of your papaw. He was here. There was this kid wearing a mask, went around. Kind of a prick to everybody. Almost said a bad word. He was a prick to everybody. We didn't like him. He was from Hyrule. So for a while we just didn't let anyone from Hyrule in here because they're all pricks. So then we got kind of racist against the Highlands. We almost had a war. But then this kid came from Hyrule, and we were like, oh, maybe those guys aren't so bad after all. It's just those wooden people. Don't let the wooden Highlands come in here, because they're real bad guys. So I think that'd be pretty cool. Just Link from Twilight Princess going to Termina, because we've seen what Hyrule looks like from Ocarina of Time to Twilight Princess. It's much bigger, much larger. In the same way what Hyrule looks like from Ocarina of Time to Breath of the Wild, much larger. Not necessarily because time moved on, but like you can come up with a theory to explain it game to game why Hyrule got bigger. But like in real world sense, like Nintendo 64 very limited, so it had a small world. GameCube had a much bigger world, was capable of much more. Breath of the Wild on the Switch, far more powerful. So much larger than even that. So like to see Termina go from the size it was on the Nintendo 64 and then expand to what would have been on the GameCube, or even if you took it further and made it with Breath of the Wild, like the size of the world and of Hyrule and Breath of the Wild, Breath of the Wild, and then you had Termina grow to be the same size, because we only seen like 4 regions in Majora's Mask Termina, so it's like, would it still be those 4 regions, just like a lot bigger, like bigger, or would it be like not as big? Would there be like more places instead of north, south, east, west? What if there was like northeast and then southeast and southwest, and like there's 8 places? That'd give you twice as many places to go to. And then you could like talk to all the people in Termina and see if they remember your grandpa and be like, hey, my grandpa saved you all. He told me when he's a skeleton. He saved Hyrule, but for some reason they made him live in a tree, so the tree became my tree, I guess. Yeah, something like that. What was the question? Which Link would you like to see returned in a future Zelda game? Oh, Ocarina of Time Link would be cool, seeing him progress into an adult naturally instead of whatever, and seeing how Hyrule or Termina changed. Wind Waker Link would be cool. Twilight Princess was originally supposed to be Wind Waker 2, and it had an adult version of Wind Waker Link, but then they turned that into Twilight Princess because people were like, hey, you need to change this cartoon stuff, we don't like it. And then there was Twilight Princess Link would be really cool. Skyward Sword Link be really cool. To see him come back, like, what did Hyrule Field look like? Because we've seen like the 3, Lanayru, Eldin, the Province, those 3. So what did Hyrule look like in between those, like the land on the ground? It would be cool to see that. Like Link trying, kind of like Breath of the Wild, where like everything's just like gone bad, like spoiled milk everywhere. So you gotta go through and kill the bokoblins and make sure they don't drink the milk, and Hyrule's like building up settlements and stuff. And then obviously a Breath of the Wild sequel, which I think is very likely. Numa mentioned that for the next Zelda game he wants to reuse the Breath of the Wild engine, obviously, because it's a good engine, in case you haven't figured it out. And they put so much time in building the engine, you would think they wouldn't want to start over from scratch. So it's likely going to be the same engine with a few minor upgrades, and then he wanted it to be multiplayer. So you'd imagine it's the same Link, but in a different area, like Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass, like A Link to the Past Link, and then Link's Awakening Link. A Link Between Worlds Link, who's the Triforce Heroes Link, and then Ocarina of Time Link in Majora's Mask, Zelda 1 Link in Zelda 2. So like different versions of the world, or different worlds to go to. I think it'll be something like that. But that's my questions. If you have any more, comment them below. Cessseeezy, thank you for letting me come in the video. You can come on mine and do some stuff and be in mailbags if you want. Thanks. Subscribe. And she has a Patreon that you should go to. I'm at the $5 level, so good stuff.
Alright guys, that's all I have for
bye.
you today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for submitting your questions, and I hope you guys enjoyed having Game Over Jessie on this episode with me. Please leave a like and comment your Zelda questions for future Hyrule Inquiries. I look forward to uploading more of these and including more guests. I have another one coming up with Miss Click, and a third one coming up with Hexovion. So I hope you guys look forward to that. Thanks, bye!
I want to thank you all for watching this video and welcome to the end slate. If you're a fan of these videos, please subscribe and comment below to let me know your thoughts. If you would like to support this channel, please consider supporting on Patreon, where you can watch videos like this early and help me create longer videos like the top 10 best and worst of Ocarina of Time, Breath of the Wild, and the top 5 official Zelda games that have either been cancelled or just went unreleased. Finally, a huge thank you to this month's supporters: George Says Hi, Link Uses the Triforce, Transcendent Sacred Courage, Glenn Cassio, Prey Warrior, Victopedia, Rusty Caulfield, Robert W., Amanda Pina, Lunarium, Chris Gasparin, Harris Priest, Lovable Christie, Key of Time 15, Jerome Measure, Daryl Quinnen, Furzin 16, Kadron, Magic Tech Review, and The Itch Network.